Hey guys, welcome to this video. It's about Vindictus Alpha Defying Fate. Welcome to this alpha test that we were blessed to be able to play this with for a week in June of 2025. Just gonna quickly go over just thoughts and things about the game actually. Both just what I think of it and where I think it might be headed. Overall, I think it's pretty good so far. Runs on Unreal Engine 5. It's got that look. I've read reports that people have had performance issues and other stuff, but it's just an alpha test, so there's really a lot that can be changed from here and into whenever the game is released. Alright, so first off, we're just in the town here. This was not here last year in the alpha test. It was actually just a straight dungeon crawl from beginning to the end with one or two captain bosses or whatever. Captain bosses I'm referring to as Null Chieftain or the Cobalt Chieftain or White Tyrant or Bloodlord, which was added into this version of this alpha test. Overall, the detail in the game is actually pretty immense and huge. There's also a lot of distracting stuff that I mean, even the goonerism in this game is actually kind of absurd, but I don't really care. But it was actually pretty distracting. But the difficulty of the game is actually one of the things I actually wanted to talk about first, was that it was actually quite difficult. I think there's going to be a lot of difficulty shock for players coming into it if they're not already previous Vindictus players. They already know that the game can be pretty unforgiving, and that sort of gives me the concern of how the first Vindi kind of bricked itself on top of monetization efforts. So I'll be going over those things as well too. Just in terms of speculation, I don't have any real facts about what it's going on, but just more or less reasonings and where the game might be headed in its direction. So far, looks like you can actually play every character and level them up. So if you actually wanted to try different heroes out and everything else, that seems to be a thing because of these shared abilities or whatever. Tree was the first indication that told me that you don't have to level each character up separately. It's sort of an account level, if anything. And then your abilities or whatever are something that's separate per character. There's that follower system in the camps that also helped indicate this even further. So that's one of the other things that was kind of interesting, because there were characters I wanted to play back in old Vindictus, but it's just so much grind that I didn't want to do, and each character had to exclusively level up their own grind path from 0 to hero, and that was a lot of work too, just to make guides. Back then when I was making character guides for almost every character, it was practically a 3-day 72-hour grind, and then a lot of footage grabbing and everything just to make sure the information was as useful and applicable to people watching as best as possible. And that's a lot, right? It's not I'm a game master that could just set a character to max and then exercise it and practice training on it for 10-20 hours and then create an actual tutorial with all the information involved. No, I had to literally go through the grind and then like a normal person, and then playing at psychotic, insane lengths of hours just to get that there, which I mean it turned out great, but at the same time that's just a lot of work, right? So, and there were other characters I was just too exhausted and busy with that I couldn't get around to the other characters ever, and so it's a missed opportunity to experience other things. Vindi was 15 years ago and pretty much spoiled the gameplay for me in the sense for a lot of other action games. The feel in this game pretty much has that same feel, so I'm actually very curious how Eevee is going to come around, and Vela and some of the other characters, because the mage gameplay was always top tier for me across every other game. I've never played any other game where mage casting was actually so fun, unlike Vindictus, so that's been permanently spoiled by this title essentially. Other things was customization. So I actually noticed customization was actually quite more extensive in this. You got 5 slots, which is good enough because most games don't even have a pants slot. I don't know why they're so allergic to pants. And the other thing that was very notable for me wasn't the dye palette system here. It's this ability to toggle on and off parts of a costume or whatever, which means your mix and matching in this game will probably be very, very high. So I don't mind games going more for cosmetics and pay to win or whatever than power pay to win. So cosmetics this is practically mostly the only thing I ever swipe on in most games anyways. I rarely ever buy power in games, because if you have to buy power in games, I just think the game's not really good, because that means it's your bank account determines whether you proceed in the game or you're just brick walled into an eternal time sink grind, which is just a waste of your time for nothing really. But customization, I hope they actually engage in this in like a play to win and like a hybrid option of both paying and playing. I know Nexon seems to have taken like different directions lately with like some of their more recent titles, which is very encouraging. Like the first Descendant and their single player game Kazan the First Berserker, it has also done really well. So usually I'm pretty hopeful when I see like their other products that have recent have also been succeeding in different efforts. So hopefully I hope Vindictus sort of takes on similar efforts in that success, and becomes like more like progressional skill or like scaled content where you don't need like extreme power to clear it or whatever and whatnot, because usually that makes for a terrible experience. And then you also attract like no players into the game too. So recipe for like, I believe, a game in health, it like attracts casuals. But if you just make like the game super hard and like casuals can't even get through it or whatever, or just like permanently struggling when they're giving like a decent concerted effort, that turns out to turn a game into a ghost town. One of the major issues that Vindictus itself had at launch, this I think is a very fair and valid criticism, was like those crimson tokens that you had to insert like an arcade in order to make runs, was actually like really bad for the game's health at the launch. And that's really important too, because the game's launch is actually where it draws the most players. You screw up the launch pretty hard with like poor monetization or brick it with other stuff, people tend to not come back, or like if they do come back, you'd have to make a huge marketing effort, you have to make like so many fixes into the game or whatever. So those are just like some previous concerns that I hope they don't repeat. It doesn't seem like they will do that. It's just a worry of like, this is like probably like PTSD or something, if anything. Other thing is like the map system. This is actually really cool already. They've sort of taken more of like a Dark Souls Elden Ring approach to the game, where you got like campsites and stuff like this. This is actually pretty interesting. And then I think most of the grind is actually like respawning some of these bosses here when you're just running through like the maps, is what it seems like in this alpha. Whether or not this is like a permanent feature or just like an alpha test feature where things could drastically change from here to launch is another thing. But I think this was pretty cool. The co-op experience, I had 1 or 2 runs on live stream that was pretty interesting. I think that will be really fun, especially in the details that the game offers and pushes on this is actually pretty extreme. So I think the co-op experience will actually be pretty fun in this. So one of the other things that was like of concern to me right off the get-go when I was just doing controls testing in the game, was jumping. Jumping is completely new in this. There was no jumping before in old Vindi as far as I remember. Well, I mean, like, it was later on, but just not as like a regular feature right off the get-go. This was like something like added into either like mechanics or whatever, but in Vindi Defying Fate, this is just a regular feature. Why this is a concern for me is because this tells me that like already there was going to be like shockwave rings that you had to like hop over, or like tripline mechanics. And sure enough, like when I was fighting the White Tyrant, he did like unblockable shockwave rings, right? That you cannot like spacebar iframe through. It cuts into your iframe. So you have to actually just like hop over it, which was like really dangerous considering when he slammed the floor, it's like a 360 AoE around him. So I thought you would actually just be able to hop on the spot because it's just an AoE on the floor. But it's also a spherical AoE around the boss as well when he slammed the floor. So you actually just had to run away and then hop back into him and slam him in the head for bonus chip damage if you actually wanted to like sweaty min-max your uptime or whatever. So that was like pretty concerning. I feel like casuals coming into it will not really appreciate that kind of difficulty shock. It's pretty shocked because like I've read such a huge contrast of mixed opinions about the game. People saying like, oh, the game is like way too hard, and then others are like, oh, I beat it in like 8 tries. I'm like, yeah, you might have beat it in 8 tries, but like if you try to approach it as a casual who was like not used to that kind of endurance or willpower of trial and failure, like constant non-stop, they're probably just going to do it like once or twice or a 3rd time and then stop afterwards. They're not going to go for 8 times and beyond trying to like figure it out or whatever, which is actually another thing why I'm glad they introduced the easy mode difficulty upon starting the game and not the normal difficulty. You playing normal difficulty is like the quote-unquote intended difficulty, and I was like, damn, even I'm struggling or whatever, right? I think a lot of other people will have very mixed opinions about it. In terms of an action game though, Vindictus Defying Fate here like has all the same and timing feels or whatever as original Vindictus, which was really good, and it's just like enhanced in every single way. for me anyways. It's very early on, so there might be like a shock with like long-time hardcore Vindi players is because of stats. The stats window is actually very interesting too, because in the old one you could speed up animations and everything with attack speed and whatnot, and right now this is like base level, right? If you go back to playing base level Vindictus, everything feels just about the same as here, so that's where I'm making this evaluation from. I'm not evaluating it as if I had like 60 attack speed and like, you know, all these special effects and like SP cat bar charger and everything for vigor and whatnot for special attacks. We don't have any of that. This is literally like the newbie stages of the game, so that's where I'm coming from. And one thing I noticed was like the stats tree of the character is just basically attack, defense, health, critical, fortitude. I haven't figured out what precision is. Either this is, I don't know what this is actually. It's like critical chances above 100, and definitely like not all my strikes are critical. Weapon level enhancements was also very interesting. Fergus is somehow missing in the blacksmith shop. I don't know why. And then also the ability tree here is already somewhat interesting too, because I feel like this can obviously be zoomed out and sunken further down per ability. This is obviously just alpha, so it seems like the UI is only like limited to what we see here. The shared tab here is actually what's really interesting here. The shared tab is like across all the characters. Right now I don't know how to character switch in town. You have to do it at a campsite where you can just like set the main character to any of these other characters and then apply it, and then you'll swap character. And then they essentially will have their own tree as well. But the shared one is always leveled, so that tells me like basic stuff like AP or whatever back then of per character, like basic attack strength or whatever, seems to might be all shared across characters, which is good because that means you get to play like all the other characters and try out their features and functions, which I think is great because, you know, it's like I always go like, oh, somebody spent time making this, and then like there's all these other characters I want to play, but I don't want to grind like everything from the ground up. And like, you know, that's just like a resource and development time loss if people don't get to try it or play around with it, right? Or they just don't want to go through like, you know, the huge grind just to like try a new character or whatever. And so I think this system is actually like much more enticing and encouraging, because at first I was just going to main like 1 or 2 characters because I don't want to grind like 14. What is it? The roster's like 30 characters now or something in old Vindictus. I don't want to grind 30 characters or something just to like see how cool they can play against like a boss or whatever. But this has been pretty much like very encouraging. Dungeon exploration. It feels more like a dungeon crawler, which is kind of good. I never really felt like Vindictus was like the MMO experience anyways, considering like the majority of the game is you're running through a dungeon in the old one, killing like a mini boss like partway through, and then killing like a giant captain boss at the end, and that's kind of it. And the main feature of the game was like go in and kill big bosses. There wasn't really like socializing too much in Vindictus as far as I remember, unless you just count like sitting in the spa and then just memeing with one another was like, you know, the peak of socializing. That's not really an MMO at all. That's more like sitting in a chat room with like water and then just talking about random stuff. So that's yeah. Some of the other thing was like controls and a glossary of terms could be added into this game, which would actually help like understanding of what's going on a lot better. A lot of stuff is very not apparent. How long like your iframe is on like a character when you spacebar, and some characters have block and others don't. And there's also like a blue spark counter that some enemies have that it's not immediately like naturally knowing how to like dodge or defend against that. For Fiona and Delia here, you just tap Q when the spark's about to hit you, but for Lan, you have to spacebar at the right time and zip into the attack or away from the attack in time, and then you press right mouse button. And for Karak, you just stand there and press right mouse button at the right time. So it was different between like 3 characters, and that was already like hard to find out considering it's not mentioned anywhere. I had to find that out through like Reddit or other people talking about it. So one of the things the game is like really missing in this alpha is like a glossary of terms and like a skill manual or like a video clip manual. They could easily do that considering I know this game is run on Unreal Engine 5. I'm sort of like developing my own game too. And but like they can add a video clip of like what the thing looks like and what to press at the right time, considering they already have the UI like in the game for it. So I don't know why they didn't add that in. They can easily do it, or at least I believe they can easily do it, because it's just recording footage of the game and then just doing it, and then just putting it as a playable sequence in like a menu somewhere. Like it could be in the skill guide, but you click on skill guide, it opens like the Steam window, and then it opens like all these other like menus, but it could just be inherently in game. So I don't know why they did that. It's a little strange. And then combat wise is like there's 4 skills each character seems to possess right now. It seems to be standard across all 4 characters. And some attacks have interruptions against bosses. So yeah, I don't even know what that charge strike does. That's one of the other things is like the charge strike doesn't make any sense to me. And there's no manual of like what it does, but it does drain like my entire bar, and I have no idea why you can charge it up to like some kind of crazy degree. And yeah, other things was like the music in the game is actually pretty good. I don't like the music in the Hoarfrost Hollow. I think one of the most memorable moments right off the get-go was the Northern Ruins at the first Null Chieftain fight. Coming into this, like, a new player experience was really good. Yeah, so coming into this fight, when first encounter, it was actually, like, really memorable. I think the soundtrack and the feel of this entire fight itself was actually really well made and put together. I think this was actually, like, extraordinarily memorable. And also the attacks were very fair from the boss, considering if you don't know what's happening in the game. It's like the right amount of difficulty and also like unfairness and fairness for the character against the boss. Like if you land attacks on the boss, like when he's wide open, it starts staggering him a little bit and he gets interrupted too. Whereas like some of the later bosses, they're just like the white Tyrant who's just going like non-stop ape on your character without like being able to be stopped at all, without being using skills to interrupt. But for the Null Chieftain, this was like a very well experienced put together out of like everything, I think. Like out of everything put together the game has to offer currently, this was like probably the most balanced experience in the game right now. And then once you get used to like all his patterns and stuff, obviously you can just like steamroll him pretty easily. But he pretty much teaches you, I would consider this boss to be like more of like the tutorial of the game. Because he actually teaches you like undodgeables, unblockables, and also like quick attacks, slow attacks, big wide sweeping motions or vertical motions. Pretty much like showcases a bit of everything, which I think is a good standard to at least like the beginning difficulties of the game. Because he literally has everything. as well as like different phases that the bosses have is also something noticeable with the music change and like health bars reaching a certain threshold where the bosses start doing different patterns. This was very noticeable in like the game itself too. That I'm not sure was like apparent in old Vindictus, maybe in newer bosses, but the old bosses didn't have different phases. Considering this is like the first captain boss that's available that you'll come across. And I think for me it was more of a shock that he had like unblockable attacks, considering he's one of the first significant bosses you come across, which was actually kind of alarming. And I was like, okay, some characters, they don't have that much movement, so that can be an issue if you're not fast on reactions, right? Whereas other characters, their spacebar is actually quite quick. I think Lan and Delia's is actually like the fastest. Karak and Theo's feels really slow. Because one's a roll, and I think Theo's not really meant to be rolling around too much in this current speed of the game's pace. Oh, and then there's certain attacks you can't interrupt as well. So reds are obviously not interruptible. So there's also like super armors that you'll have to like discover on some bosses as well too, where your skills won't penetrate super armor attacks. And it's you just have to like experience and know where they are. Oh. And the blue parry counters are actually very short timing. It's much tighter timing than anything else currently in the game. But yeah, and then you've got like this complete screen when you beat a boss that's very much like any other Souls or like, you know, Souls-like game. So the experience is actually quite morphed, but the feel is like Vindictus, which I think very much replicates what old Vindictus people will experience. And for people who've never played the old one as well too, I think this will be kind of refreshing, considering some of the mechanics in the old one is it's actually kind of wild when you actually look at older footage of the bosses and what each mechanic bosses had to offer. I think strange mechanics like Dullahan playing basketball bombs into the neck of the armor to dismantle it was kind of weird, or like Glass where you have to grab like light spears and walk through wormhole portals to drop from a high distance, even though it's like a ceiling, like, you know, arena room. And with that effect, you walk through the portal, and if you do the mechanic right, you fall from the sky and pierce the boss into the floor and stuff like that. Or if you fail, you just plummet to your death, essentially, from the ceiling, which was also pretty funny. It's like, oh no, someone else took the portal, and then like now you're just falling from the sky and dying. So one of the other things I want to talk about is that there's no secondary weapons in the game, actually. That's replaced by the jump key, essentially. Secondary weapons was like throwing spears back in the original, or like chain hooks and like bombs and stuff that could be used as like part of mechanics or just dungeon crawling and whatnot. In this, it doesn't seem like those appear here, so I'm not exactly sure how mechanics oriented the game is going to be, or if it's just going to be hack and slash oriented. I actually hope that they will have like secondary items to engage with like boss mechanics or whatever, like break-offs, armor spear tosses or whatever. I'm actually more or less like worried about what's going to happen if they put the Succubus Queen in here, considering how goonery this game already gets. That's going to be wild if you have to like break all her clothes off again or whatever. But overall, like combat-wise, everything does feel pretty similar, except Lan is obviously somewhat different, and the iframes on like Gliding Fury are not existent, but it's just sword. The other thing is like characters in the original roster also had second style weapons that I'm not sure if this one's gonna do that, because based on the skill tree and the character info alone, it doesn't seem to indicate that characters will have like a second weapon. So I'm not even sure if Lan's gonna have his twin spear spin to win style, and I don't know if Eevee's gonna have a scythe, or they're just gonna move that over to a new character entirely of its own. Characters like Lithor and Herc seem like they're very, very plausible to be brought over, considering their weapons is like Fist Gauntlet and Greatsword. which are very, very different. Whereas like Miri, like a dragon spine, or like Kale with a spear or whatever, and then you have like Latia with a spear too. Those two seem like they share like similar kind of weapons. Kai being like ranged characters. Past this alpha, I actually assume Eevee and Kai is probably going to be put in because all the characters are melee right now and kind of like brawlery. So I suspect like the next two characters that they might introduce, if they introduce it, are going to be ranged characters, and that's like Eevee Mage and like Kai Bow. So that's my suspicion. But yeah. Other than that, I think the alpha test is pretty cool. Obviously, there's optimization efforts that could be made in the game, considering it is choppy in some scenes of the game. I think the choppiest experience I had was in Hoarfrost Hollow fighting the Captain Imagsak or whatever. Or what is it? The Chimpu Imulok. Yeah, I had the most laggy experience like fighting this boss when he went into phase 2 and went like purple mode. Other than that, I think the game's like on a good direction. One of the other issues is just like space gauging like attacks or whatever in the air against like bosses that just attack you like non-stop, like these raid bosses. I assume they're raid bosses because they just can't be staggered by normal means like regular attacks in between. You have to just be like attacking them non-stop because they're attacking you non-stop. And they're also like party available. And then like lock on as well. Landing like the final version of like your attack is usually quite difficult because it's quite slow in the current state of the game, where Lan is the fastest character out of everybody. So it feels more natural like on Lan just because he has higher animation speeds than the rest of the characters in terms of like just everything. But he doesn't really have any special functions. He pretty much just plays like a DPS god. And yeah, like when you're fighting a boss like the White Tyrant and he's got like 6 attack sequences, it's actually kind of hard to land like your final like smash into an enemy. Even with Lan, when I'm moving pretty fast, I have to be like attacking the air and smashing like the floor and hope the boss doesn't like connect with me before I connect with them, because they interrupt my attacks but I can't interrupt them. So that might be a pretty frustrating or negative experience for other players who are not really used to this form of combat being this engaged. Considering this boss is like just going crazy on me right now too, while I'm trying to talk and do this at the same time. Oh wait, he grabbed me. I was in an iframe. Oh my god. So yeah, it's like stuff like that is like you not knowing like my own timings on the iframe as well, because it's not in a skill window, indicating how long the duration is actually like something that's a little unforgiving. Where I mentioned earlier, like a gloss of terms would be really helpful. I'm just gonna die. I missed. He's transitioning. As usual, very dangerous to drink a potion if you're not paying attention to what the boss is doing. Oh, and then this is where you have to jump, undodgeable ring. up. Oh shit, it's not enough. It's an enraged attack. We're just gonna dodge everything. That's not where you attack. I missed. And yeah, that's like doing a solo on that's doing a solo on what should be recommended as a party run. But yeah, solo is like, I guess if you want to feel punishment when you're not used to the patterns. But yeah, when I did this in a co-op experience, it was actually quite a lot easier. So in co-op play, when you don't have permanent boss aggro, it's quite a bit easier. But it is doable to clear solo on these raids as well. I'm also curious if they'll have like challenge modes like Unlocker and whatever, and like not getting hit more than 0 times or 3 times or whatever to get like medals or whatever later on. But that's probably like so far down the road that I don't think that'll be like anytime soon in terms of what's going to be released or whatever's planned. The main town as well is also massive. Like Colon is now huge. There's so much going on. I know that there's housing as well that's planned for this. The free guild, your guild house is like just above the mercenaries mission board over there. When I was running around the town and just looking at interactables and stuff, things like, I think it was here, village gates. So you know, this is probably like heading to Rochest. One of the entrances out here, it was like an examinable object, and I was like, oh, there's gonna be housing in this direction. And that's why I was like, wow, I'm like, there's so much in this town, and it's so huge too. It feels like AFKing in town felt really nice. So I actually think like the socialization in this might be better, hopefully. So it might actually incur more of that MMO experience that some people might be seeking. Because this entire area is the town, all the way to the back of that spinning windmill. The windmills that aren't spinning you can't get to. That's like a blocked off area, as far as I've known and seen anyways. But there is a housing area somewhere. I don't know where it is anyway. But if you still have access to the alpha when this video is posted, you can just hover along the edges. One of the edges has like an examinable object, and it talks about like housing or whatever. So there is like personal housing that seems to be planned, and yeah, and then they already have like photo modes too. So photo mode is already pretty good. The controls to do photo mode as well is actually pretty good. You can position the character pretty easily. This emo preset at the bottom is actually kind of busted. I don't really know how that really works right now. I've tried setting different presets and it just doesn't work. You can like edit it here or whatnot and add it into like the slots, but how you switch these presets, it's not even like known how to in the natural settings. So I think that's just like in development or whatever. I'm pretty sure they could do something different that makes it better than that. Because so much of the controls are not even used on the keyboard right now anyways, or the mouse. Alright, so customization. It's actually kind of crazy like what you can customize, at least in this so far. Some have like overlaid textures that just kind of gradient 2 colors together, which was actually really nice when I found out this blade had it. Others is like, as I mentioned before, being able to toggle on and off like particular elements of certain costumes. One of the other things was like the color palettes here. I do like the dye system. It's actually pretty good where it kind of keeps like colors like cohesive in their own areas. I actually think this dye system is actually really well put together. It makes customization like so much easier if you're trying to build a theme. And then having the default colors at the top here was actually really nice, because sometimes you do want to revert back to where the armor or whatever was originally and then just like work from there, which was a nice touch. One of the other things was I'm really concerned of like I mean, if people played old Vindictus, you know what die ampules are and freaking RNG. I really hope that doesn't come here. If they do that, I would actually just not play on principle, because that was like the worst thing ever. That dies and stuff was like filled on random RNG, which was terrible. I don't know why they did that. That was another reason why the game just like bricked itself. So I'm gonna bring up another game, Black Desert, as an example. I didn't know in different regions of Black Desert, the value pack did not enable like free customization or like recoloring of characters and whatever and whatnot in other regions of the game. I thought that was like across the board, but when I was playing and people were telling me on NA on stream that oh, the value pack only like gave me this and that or whatever, right? And I thought that was actually really annoying, because I actually felt bad for the other players, because the customization and like all these other like color efforts, you look at this window and it's actually kind of like so much work has been put into this, but then if no one ever uses it, like what was the point? It's just like a development time loss, and like I wouldn't want to throw my money into a game and then they put it into a system and bar it behind a wall where barely anybody uses it. Like, I would rather see other people running around town looking like clownish colors or like other stuff or whatever. Just like any kind of customization, whether they look cohesive or like a fashion model or like a Joker, it doesn't matter. That's part of the experience. And it's always like interesting for me to stare at like other people's creations. And when you have this much like customization options, I hope that this system is actually engaged more in like play to win rather than paywalls. And especially not RNG walls. If they turn it into a gacha system, holy, I don't know. That's like scumbag behavior. So hopefully that never gets there. But essentially, yeah, like this die system I think is actually pretty good already. And the customization slots that's available is actually quite a lot too. Considering there's like your hair slot, your iris slots, characters like super detailed considering it's Unreal 5, and you can get up this close and it still looks really, really detailed. There's markings as well. There's 3 slots for face markings, 3 slots for bodies. I don't even know if this will like encompass like eye accessories or other things later on, unless that's in the outfits, because that's not in there. So who knows? And then like physique, you can customize like each character quite a bit in terms of their overall like size of like everything. There's like sliders if you go for advanced and all this other stuff, but I just kept it like basic for now. Obviously we'll have people that'll go like mega pervy and others just like, you know, looking hero or whatever. I have a friend who was playing the alpha and he burned through all his die ampules already too in the alpha, so that's why I was like, I'm kind of interested in how they actually proceed with this system. And then this currency as well is kind of interesting. If they have like a hybrid of like play to win where you can just earn currency and then buy stuff, as well as like pay shop to like speed it up and unlock or whatever, that would be really nice. Even if it's like something like super rare, if they let it grindable be obtainable and whatnot, and that's still fine with me too. I would still support it with like real money. Usually I buy outfits anyways in most games. And like Power Pass, they do have a Power Pass system that's already enabled in here as well. That was part of this alpha, and you can earn like other stuff from doing like daily objectives and whatever. So it seems like there's going to be some kind of like daily or weekly kind of system that will occur, and like challenges to earn like, you know, points towards this battle pass type thing. So that's also like some things to think about when the game is headed towards its release, I guess, and to see what they come out with. But overall, I'm hopeful because Nexon has done fairly decent well with the first Descendant and Kazan First Berserker, and obviously still running Maple Story and some of their older titles. And it seems like they might have taken a new direction in certain ways to make their games monetized in that direction. I'll still be critical about like things that are crap, and I'll always praise things that I think are good. So that's pretty much it for my overall look of Vindictus Defying Fate. I think it's headed in a decent direction. I hope the game does well, and I hope it actually brings like fresh new like combat action to the market as well. Overall, I think this game will probably do really well if it's just like a co-op experience among like 4 people. I don't know if it's like an 8-player experience kind of game. This game feels like really it feels really cozy, and like I think like a 4-player experience is really good here. And having played so many MMOs, I honestly have sort of landed on the finalization that anywhere up to groups of 4 is kind of like the best player experience. When you get to 8-player experience, the problems an enemy has to propose to the team starts getting really, really messy, or it becomes really, really hyper coordinated, and that usually is not so much freeform, like enjoyable. Like you can't just like jump into the game, and you have to like start forming groups over time, and then if the content doesn't delineate from that, then you just end up with like a funnel of people like into a small community, and only like they can clear the content until they nerf it, and then like everybody else can just readily available. This is like apparent in a lot of MMOs that have like power creeps or like progressional carrot chase walls. So hopefully I'm feeling like this game can avoid that, considering you could fight bosses severely under-leveled and underpowered and beat them with just pure skill because there's no time limit at the moment. But if they take on more of an approach of like super unfairness, like Wuthering Waves and Phantom Illusion bosses rank 6, like those are super unfair, but it's clearable with like even like 4-star weak characters by sheer skill and gameplay of the player, which is showcased in like other videos or whatever, right? And they also run the game on Unreal Engine, so they have the same capabilities as this game, if not less, because they're running on Unreal 4, I believe, whereas this is on Unreal 5, so this one has a more diverse like capabilities to have the game be great or clunky or whatever, etc, etc. It's all on the developer's skill, essentially. One last thing I want to touch on was the weapon enhancement system before the end of this video. I don't really know what they're doing with this. It's actually kind of interesting to me.
Is there anything you need, or are you just looking
enhancing
around?
Right now is actually bringing like every single weapon up in order to increase your total enhancement level. That was actually kind of weird and interesting to me that I didn't realize this. I was actually fighting bosses with like a level 3 sword all the way up until like I completed everything and realized that I was severely underpowered fighting bosses, is why I felt like I was smacking them with like a pool noodle, and I was like, why is every boss so much HP? And then I realized like my weapon strength was actually incredibly weak. And it was really interesting when I actually finally understood what was happening. You have to like enhance literally all these weapons in order to like level up your overall weapon stat. So after that, beyond this, it's just cosmetic. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. So I don't know what they're doing with this, or if this is just temporary for the alpha or whatnot. And obviously this was not obvious at all at how this like powered up at all in progression. It just said like, oh, enhance the weapon, and most games you're used to just like, oh, I'm gonna select this weapon and bring it up to like plus 15 or whatever and whatnot, right? No, here it was like just fill out 3 nodes and it's maxed out, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, I can't bring it higher than that, like what's going on? But then like, you know, you can do this too, and I was like, okay, let's just bring this up to the same strength, was the assumption I had. Except later on when I actually started looking around after doing everything and leveling up all the other stuff, I was like, oh, let's just max it out. And then I noticed like this on the side here that was just going up permanently every time I hit this up, and I was like, wait, I was like, all these weapons added up actually compose to the overall strength of every weapon that you have. So after once it's maxed out, every other new weapon that you obtain and power up just adds to the strength of any of these other weapons. So then this just becomes like a cosmetic skin after, essentially. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Because again, that goes back to what I said before, like if they make cosmetics sort of like grind and playable to obtain and not like some kind of absurd time sink, I think like a lot of people would engage in that. Some of the times it's like, even in Black Desert when I was like grinding for gear and power, my sole purpose for getting like a Pen Blackstar was to just grind like Olans faster so I could get the Orzeka outfit and all this other stuff. I literally just grind for power and aesthetics. FF14, when Shadowbringers was out, I didn't even do Shadowbringers. I went through Eureka and the Baldesian Arsenal just to get like glowing armor before I even went into that. And most players in FF14 thought I was like mental illness brain broken, because most people skipped all the expansions and jumped like straight into Shadowbringers and onwards, whereas I went from ARR and then I went straight to Stormblood, and then I went through all the side contents, found Eureka, did Valdesian Arsenal, and then I went to get glowing armor in like a 4-hour raid open party 48-person run, and I grinded that before I even started Shadowbringers, even though I owned Shadowbringers expansion, and people were like, what? They're like, nobody does that, except I did. Because I wanted cosmetics, and I will literally grind power for cosmetics, but I will not like throw exorbitant amounts of money on power for power, which is just dumb, because there's always power creeps and other stuff, which is why I think that's like a loss. Compared to cosmetics could be like forever. So that's my take on that. Alright, thanks so much for watching. This is the end of the video. I'm just doing like a co-op just to showcase one of the last bosses that was put into the game, which is Bloodlord. Usually this was like a mid-game in early Vindictus, but he's now like just a... Oh, I'm actually just getting through. And there's also a life system too, so if you get downed in co-op, you get to pick yourself up or get assisted in being picked up in 2 tries, which I thought was like pretty interesting. But this is the co-op experience pretty much. Right now it's just like perma-wailing on a boss, which is kind of funny. And like each character can actually interrupt the boss with their skills, which I thought was like kind of OP because like some people could chain like their stuns together if you wanted a co-op effort to turn the boss into a smashing dummy for like a short moment. His HP is also like increased as well, which he's actually quite a bit tankier in this when doing 4 players. Oh my god. Yeah, so this guy's warm-up patterns in Phase 1 is actually so fast. That was another thing that was unexpected when I was learning Bloodlord here. I don't know why his patterns are so fast in Phase 1, and it kind of just deletes most people until they get used to it. He's still in his warm-up phase. Okay, now he's going like crazy. I'm going. I don't know the timing to block that. Oh shit! I missed. He's tracking me. He's trying to kill me. Somebody got down. Usually I actually turn off my camera lock. You can lock onto the enemy, like, and unlock on them. If I'm trying to wind up like an attack like old school Vindictus, attacking the air and then into the boss on the final hit. But that requires timing and distance gauging, which is a little weird. But yeah, it's because the attack speeds are also like quite slow for what it is at the moment, and there's no way to really affect that. So every character is kind of just working on a base attack speed at the moment. So it'll be interesting if later on there will be attack speed adjustments and enhancements in the characters in the game. Oh shit. Shit, oh, no. And I'm down. So yeah, I don't know how this system is gonna work later on. Oh. And I'm just on a timer. There's no real way to like speed up your own recovery if you're down. But someone else can pick you up though, and speed it up. there a way to like gesture fast? Oh, I don't know how to gesture fast. All right, that's it. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.